So many thanks. We are going today to continue what we started last week. I wasn't here, but I heard from Rav Moshe David and Rav Shmuel about what he taught. They taught last week, learned together about Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, and start about his disciples. And we will continue from there. So, and basically, I will go back to the description of the Mishna of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and his disciples, and I will then go into the deeper stories about these disciples. So, if we start from the Mishnah, I just need to open it. So here I will share the screen. Here, Moshe David is joining us now, so we'll make him a co-host. And when we start from the Mishnah, what of the disciples, we learn about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, we learn from Hillel and Shammai, and then we talk about the 5 disciples. Rabbi Yochanan, here I'll read here. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had 5 disciples, and they were these: Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkenus, Rabbi Yoshua ben Hanania, Rabbi Yossi the priest, Rabbi Yossi HaKohen, Rabbi Shimon ben Netanel, and Rabbi Elazer ben Arach. He, Rabbi Yochanan, used to list their outstanding virtues. Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkenus is a plastered cistern which loses not a drop. Rabbi Yoshua ben Hanania, happy is the woman that gave birth to him. Ashrei Yoledeto. Rabbi Yossi is a priest, is a pious man. Chassid. Rabbi Shimon ben Netanel is one that fears sin. And Rabbi Elazer ben Arach is like a spring that ever gathereth force. So we talked about these 5 disciples, and I will want to go through and talk about these people. Now, basically there are 5, and I was supposed to talk about all 5, but actually 2 of them are almost unheard. We know barely anything about it. Rabbi Yossi HaKohen and Rabbi Shimon ben Netanel. These people don't forecome in the Mishnayot. We don't know them as a great rabbi. They were probably great disciples and part of this study group that was probably amazing to be part of the 5 people, but they are not central. The 3 others, Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkenus, Rabbi Yoshua ben Hanania, and Rabbi Elazer ben Arach, they are very central, especially the first 2, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua, but the 3 famous disciples are Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yoshua, and Rabbi Elazer. Now, I'm going to talk especially about them, but we're not going to go through their story because they have a whole story of themselves. I will start their stories as disciples, because we actually find in this Mishnah, in Masechet Avot, something we didn't hear up to now. We hear a change that I think is crucial to the change of the way study happened in Judaism. Up till now, we had all the great rabbis. We heard about them, who they studied from, right? If you remember, we had we started from Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik, and then we went to his disciple, and it said that his disciples studied from him, and then the next disciple studied from their rabbis. Whenever the next rabbi came, it said who did they study from. But up to now, we never saw vice versa. when we heard about Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik, or on Antignos Isucho, or Yoshua ben Pachia and Itai Arbeli, or Hillel and Shammai, we didn't hear about their disciples as part of their stories. We only heard about who was once rabbi, but we didn't hear who was that rabbi's disciples, who are the Talmidim who studied. I don't know, I can't emphasize how important this is. The first time that we try to understand who the rabbi is depends on which disciple he had. We understand the rabbi through his disciples, through those he teach. And that is a great change of how, I would say, how Judaism works. Suddenly the study itself is part of the essence. The way you study in the study hall, not only what you can recall, what you can tell about the previous generations of rabbis, actually the meeting itself is important. What is happening in the study hall? So when we come here to these rabbis, and Moshe David, are you already? Are you here with us, of Moshe David? Okay, he came in for a second, and then okay, okay, he will join us later. He wrote. So I will talk about. Today we will have a story session, and we will learn a few stories about these disciples and the way of where they came from and who they were. And we'll start from Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach. I will go now out from this screen, and I will show you and I will show you a different source sheet that is not as nice, but yes. We have now a long story. I want to make a long story short. So I'm not sure if we need to go through the whole story of Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkenus. Is there someone here who wants to read the story? It will help me a lot, because I hate reading in English.
I can read.
Great, thank you.
Not less astonishing is the beginning of the literary career of Rabbi Eliezer. He was 22 years old when, for the first time, he felt a desire for study. And when he intimated to his father that his intention was to sit at the feet of Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakkai, his father Hyrcanus told him to plow a full mana, a piece of land, without eating anything. Rabbi Eliezer got up early in the morning and did the will of his father, but then left him. It is said that that day was Friday, and that he went in the evening to his father-in-law to eat. Others say that he did not eat at all, that he fasted from the 6th hour of the eve of Sabbath to the 6th hour from the expiration of Sabbath.
Okay, I'll start with
yes.
Just to explain the story. Rabbi Eliezer, he was the son of Horkenus, and he never studied Torah. He was a simple Jew. The family was I don't know if it was rich, not very rich. It was a good family from somewhere outside of Jerusalem. They had to some agriculture. They had their land, and Rabbi Eliezer, his father tells him, "You can't go and study. You need to work. We need you here with us." Very understandable. And he says that he has to plow a big area, and he does that. But then disappears right after. You can continue. On the road.
On the road, he saw something which looked to him like food. It is said that if it was cow dung, he picked it up and put it to his mouth. He continued his journey and finally came to the place where Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakkai had his residence and his school. Rabbi Eliezer remained overnight at an hostelry in the neighborhood. In the morning, he sat at the feet of the great sage, and whose attention he attracted by the offensive odor that came from his mouth. Rabbi Yohanan, attributing the bad smell to an empty stomach, said to him, "Has thou eaten anything today?" Rabbi Eliezer made no answer. Again, the master put the same question to him, and again he was silent. His host was sent for, of whom the sage inquired whether Rabbi Eliezer partook of any food at his place. "No, he did not," the host said. "I did not offer him any food, thinking that he might eat with the rabbi. And I," the rabbi said, "did not offer him any food, assuming that he had eaten at your place. But while we are conversing, Eliezer is starving." Food was given to Eliezer, and then Rabbi Yohanan blessed Eliezer and said unto him, "As thy offensive odor is the result of privation for the sake of study, may thy name shine forth with the glory of scholarship."
Yes. So the story shows the dedication of Rabbi Eliezer, who is willing not to eat, to starve, but wants to consume the Torah. And as you can see, it disturbed the others in the study hall, because when someone doesn't eat and maybe eats some dirt, then he stinks, and it's hard to study when there's such a bad smell in your surroundings. Rabbi Yochanan inquires, and at the end he helps Rabbi Eliezer and gives him food, and he says, "This Rabbi Eliezer, you will turn to a great rabbi." Now, to understand this story, I think it's very, very important, both the aspect of the dirt, what he eats and why he doesn't eat, and what is important for him. Rabbi Eliezer doesn't want to be helped. When Rabbi Yochanan goes to him and says, "Did you eat anything?" he doesn't say, "I didn't," because he doesn't know. He doesn't want to be helped. He is giving himself completely. His father said you're not going to eat, so he doesn't eat. Like he disappears from the area. He agrees he insists on studying Torah. This is what he wishes. You can also add he in principle, what we can discuss, is he a good person or not, because he leaves his family, who needs a worker. He needs these working hands, and goes to the rabbi, to the town, to study, and which definitely brings frustration to his brothers, who needs to work more. His father, who now is missing a pair of hands, and misses his son. And this is the start, the setting of his story. So we see someone who comes in a late age, against the will of his family, leaves his family to the sake of Torah, and also willing to sacrifice and pay prices in the area, and doesn't want to lean on anyone. He doesn't want to be helped. The end of the story here is also quite interesting. So let's finish the story to see how it ends up between his father, who comes again to meet him. Yes, can you continue?
Hyrcanus was angry at his son for the course he had taken and made up his mind to disgrace and disinherit him. But it came to the ears of Rabbi Yohanan what Hyrcanus resolved upon to do. It was the day when Rabbi Yohanan was lecturing to the great men in Israel that Hyrcanus meant to punish his disobedient son. And the rabbi appointed watchmen and advised them, should Hyrcanus come, do not allow him to enter the auditorium. They tried to carry out his instruction, but Hyrcanus managed to push himself through and to reach the seats of Ben Zist HaKeset, Nakdimon, Ben Gurion, and Kalba Shebua.
I have to change this because it's actually a bit wrong.
Okay.
It's a wrong. Translation. It doesn't say that he's not allowed to enter. He says he's not allowed to sit down. He was actually pushed up by he comes to a fancy dinner, maybe to collect money. And sometimes you make these dinners with all the important people, and he's pushed up by the guards, one after the other. So he goes in, and the guards say, no, you can't sit here. You have to move forward. And he's being moved forward again and again, until he sits right in the front, next to three very famous people, Ben Tzitzit HaKasat, Nakdimon Ben Gurion, and Kalba Savua. Maybe some of you heard one of these names. I think the most famous one is Kalba Savua. Any of you heard the name Kalba Savua? Kalba Savua is the father-in-law of Rabbi Akiva, and he was known to be the richest man in Jerusalem. He was extremely wealthy, and all these three people, both Nakdimon Ben Gurion, Ben Tzitzit HaKasat, and Kalba Savua, are the richest. So imagine the situation: there's a dinner in the community that is a fundraiser. In the back, you have the youth, right, in the back tables. They don't sit in. And then you have some community members, and the most distinguished community members. And of course, in the front, you put the heavy donors, those who have the most money, and you want to please them, you want them to be happy. So they sit in the front. And here's the same thing. And suddenly, this Hyrcanus, that is probably wealthy, but he's not rich, but he has something. He finds himself together with the richest people in Israel. Wow, already an amazing situation to sit. Yes, continue.
It is said that on the occasion, Rabbi Yohanan threw glances of affection at Eliezer and requested him to open an argument. Modestly did Rabbi Eliezer attempt to decline the honor, saying that he did not know how to begin. But the master and his disciples prevailed, and Eliezer rose and discussed things in an astounding manner, and every subject he touched upon and elucidated pleased Rabbi Yohanan to such an extent that he got up and kissed him on the forehead. But Rabbi Eliezer remarked, "Master, everything I said I have learned from thee." Before adjournment, Hyrcanus, Eliezer's father, got up and said, "Masters, I had come here with the intention to disgrace my son Eliezer by disinheriting him. But now, however, after I have seen this, I say that all my properties shall be given to him, and his brother shall get none of them."
Yeah. I will add from the Hebrew here that don't worry. Rabbi Eliezer also answers on that and says, if I wished money, if I wished silver and gold, I would ask God, because God says, Liya kesef v'liya zahav. If I wished a land, I will ask God, because it says that Kili kol haaretz, all the land is God's. So so he says to his father, I don't need the all the inheritance. I don't need you can give it to my brothers. It's not what I'm after. But it's beautiful. The story ends with how Rabbi Eliezer stands in front of his father, speaks divrei Torah in a manner that is amazing and astonished everyone around, including his father, who sees now the virtue of limud Torah. Now, this story is so amazing, and the reason I want to read all of it is, first of all, it's a very important story, tells about the environment at that time. For me personally, it's important because when I was in third grade, we had a play in school of this story, and I played Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And I remember the one who played Rabbi Eliezer ben Orkanus, who I needed to kiss his forehead because it was very embarrassing for me to kiss another boy. It disgusted me a bit, but I managed to do it in the play. So now, why do I mention that I played this play when I was in third grade? To tell you how much importance this story has. That it's like one of the central stories told by generations of Jews of the importance of studying Torah, of the person who leaves all the wealth and money that he can get in this world and dedicates himself to Torah. This is a personality of Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkenus, and how this Torah is also even his father is getting convinced that it's very important. It tells us a lot about Rabbi Eliezer's identity. Later on, you will probably hear a bit more about Rabbi Eliezer, that it also ends terribly with him. But I don't want to ruin the future. I won't tell you the end of his story, but it ends like that because what we can definitely see from this story, that Rabbi Eliezer is a stubborn person. He is someone who is dedicated, and when he's dedicated, he doesn't see anything. He's dedicated to the truth. He's dedicated. Last week, you heard about that he's a bor such and Omer betipai, someone who insists on not creating anything from himself, but only what you heard from his rabbi. He said, I'm not clever. The only thing I know is to quote my rabbis. He is known from different places as Shamuti. What is Shamuti? Shamuti means someone who follows Beit Shammai. We talked a bit about Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel in the past. This is very essential. Beit Shammai doesn't exist anymore. Hillel is the one who wins, right? Beit Hillel, we learned the halacha that we follow Beit Hillel and not Beit Shammai. But historically, we can add the disciples of Beit Shammai, they were those who fought in the fight against the Romans, and they were literally killed. Beit Shammai was physically killed. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai he is from Beit Hillel, and the halacha continues through Beit Hillel. But still, you will see also among those who continue from Hillel, people who are more identify themselves more with the Beit Shammai way. And what was the big difference between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel? The main thing with this discussion about should we just continue what our rabbis told us? Should we just learn everything? Torah leMoshe miSinai, does it mean we just need to bring from the previous generations? Or are we part of the studying, part of creation, part of understanding, which is the way of Hillel? And Rabbi Eliezer comes and continues the tradition of Beit Shammai, but within Beit Hillel. So he will quote his own rabbi, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. He will quote Hillel. He will quote these rabbis who said you need to create, but he will stay in a manner of just quoting them and not creating himself more Torah and so on. The other rabbis are very different. The other rabbis in this group, Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Elazer, that we will talk about, they have a very different approach to the way you should study. The first one that we can see here that goes one against the other is, first of all, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Elazer. These are the two that are mentioned in the next Mishnah. If you have any question, you should ask. Okay, so because right now you let me speak. Don't stop me if you're not sure. But you can see here in the Mishnah that you already saw last week, and I will mention that now when we come to discuss these two, we can see that that Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai haya moneh shivchan. He talked about their virtues. And he talked about Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkenus, a plaster cistern which loses not a drop. As they said, he only studied from his rabbis, and he doesn't forget one thing. He keeps the whole Torah. You can say he's a living, walking Torah. He carried everything that he learned from his rabbis. The last one is Rabbi Elazer ben Arach, which also touches the same metaphor of water. Yes, Rabbi Eliezer, he's a cistern that doesn't lose a drop. Rabbi Elazer ben Arach is like a spring that ever gathers force. Ke'ma'ayan mitgaber. I know that here in Scandinavia we don't see so much springs, right? The water comes in a different way. In Israel, springs are the way of getting water. And all the time when you walk to different springs in Israel, it's an amazing thing. If you didn't go around in Israel and visit these springs, usually they have a pool. You can see times after rain, after a strong rain, that become much stronger. You can see how the water comes out of the much quicker from the mountains, and it's a beautiful thing that it feels for someone, because it doesn't rain anymore. The rain came in before, and you don't really see it. Suddenly you see lots of water coming out, and it feels like the water strengthens themselves. Like you can understand how out of the ground comes more and more water. And this is the example of Rabbi Elazer ben Arach, something that is not, it doesn't collect water, it creates water. And it makes more and more water. It takes a drop and makes it into a flood. And this is a very different aspect. Rabbi Elazer ben Arach here is like this great student. He was definitely not Scandinavian. In Scandinavian, we respect authority, right? The rabbi teaches and we study. It's not only about Judaism, it's everything. If I'm not an expert, I can't say anything about this topic because I need to go and study in the university, and then we will listen to this person, right? We listen to the doctor. The doctor says so, he's right. We don't use the second opinion, third opinion. This is much more classical for Jews in America and in Israel. In Israel, we come with our second opinion to the doctor and started arguing with him. He would think he knows. We respect knowledge and authority. This is the type of Rabbi Eliezer, because we respect someone who studied the knowledge, not someone who comes in and creates. Rabbi Eliezer, when he's there to study, he hears something from the rabbi and says, wow, that's so amazing. We can build on that mountains, on the small idea that you just now brought. He's a very active disciple who uses what he studied to create more, to build more, to to make a flood out of a drop. It's very lively, that discussion. He doesn't sit as quiet as you do and just listen carefully to what I say. He come and build on what you heard. So I hope you can do the same. Some of the times we actually do that. So I urge you to do the same. But right now it's more a history lesson, right? So I come with the knowledge because I learned it in advance. But this is the type of personality that Rabbi Elazer ben Arach brings. And here it comes in a very interesting discussion in the Mishnah. In the simple Mishnah, it says, if all sages of Israel were on one scale of the balance, and Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkenus on the other scale, he would outweigh them all. So Mishnah says, if all the rabbis of Israel came, he will be stronger, he will be heavier. His argument, no one can discuss with him. He will outweigh not only any rabbis, he will outweigh all the rabbis together. Because he never forgets a single thing he studied. So no one can discuss, no one can win over him. But then comes, the Mishnah adds something from Abba Shaul. Abba Shaul omer mishmo. Abba Shaul said in his name, who is his name? Of the teacher, of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And he says, if all the sages of Israel were in one scale of the balance, and Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkenus also with him, so all the rabbis with Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkenus, and Rabbi Elazer ben Arach on the other scale, he would outweigh them all. Rabbi Elazer ben Arach, the one who can create, he would outweigh anyone else. So you can see here within the Mishnah, two very different approaches to what is better. Someone who studied, listened carefully, and never forgets anything, or someone who can take the knowledge and create much more. Yes, Daniel.
I'm thinking, I remember a previous show where we discussed that, or we saw a Mishnah that studying is not the most important thing. If you remember, I don't know if you had I looked it up, and I think it was Rabban Gamliel, and
yes,
yes, and something. Is this the same continuation of this this topic is study versus action?
I don't think so, because both of them are from the study world. You can see, for example, Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkenus, he leaves working for the sake of studying. He's doing the Torah Manuto. His Torah is his work. He definitely doesn't follow Rabban Gamliel's direction. It says you have to, the Maaseh is more important than Torah. And the same with Rabbi Elazer ben Arach. He's also someone who studies. I think the discussion goes to a completely different. Now we're going into the study hall. You could say that these 5 disciples represent what happened in the study hall. In the study hall, you have different directions of the way to study.
Yes.
Who is the best? Think of a class, also in a university. Who's the best student? The one who writes down and remembers everything that the teacher said, or the one who uses what the teacher said to create more and to ask and to evolve to a whole different level. There are advantages to both. And this tension is exactly what the Mishnah is standing, like which direction is stronger. Now, you can see a beautiful direction here that leans towards Rabbi Elazer ben Arach, the one who can create. But unfortunately, this goes to a different direction that is less, that is not as positive. And I will now go and I want to see a bit about Rabbi Elazer ben Arach. and his and what happened with him. Yeah, here. So make a new share. Here. Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach, you can see the story here for the Chagiga. It happened that the Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai was riding on a donkey, and Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach was guiding the donkey from behind. So they walked together. Rabbi Eliezer said to Rabban Yochanan, Master, teach me a chapter of the heavenly chariot. The heavenly chariot is a chariot that Maseh Merkava, the chariot of God, of it's like how you could say how the secrets of the universe. This is Maseh Merkava in Judaism. The secrets of God, of the mystic, of all the things we don't understand. How is everything built together? Rabban Yochanan said to him, haven't I already told you from the beginning that one should not discuss a chariot with even one individual unless he was a wise man able to comprehend it by his own insight? You can only discuss it if someone is deep enough to understand things himself, with their own insight. Rabbi Eliezer said to him, if so, I will now lecture before you. Rabban Yochanan says, go ahead. Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach began to explicate the topic of the heavenly chariot. Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai got off his donkey, wrapped himself in talit, and they sat together on a stone under an olive tree, and he lectured before him. Rabban Yochanan then stood up and kissed him on his head and said, remember that Rabban Yochanan kissed Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkenus in the first story. So you can see, again, two stories of how Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai kisses the forehead of his disciple. And he says, blessed is the Lord God of Israel, who gave a son to our father Abraham, who knows how to understand and interpret the glory of his Father in heaven. Happy are you, our father Abraham, that Elazer ben Arach, who knows how to understand and interpret the glory of his Father in heaven, came out from your loins. Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach walks together with his rabbi. And he asks his rabbi, come, tell me the secret of the universe. Tell me about God, what God is. Tell me all the most amazing things. And Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai says, no, I can't, because you're not allowed to discuss this. You're not allowed to tell someone if he can't understand these things himself. And then Rabbi Eliezer says, okay, so I will try to teach. I will try to tell you about these things. Now, Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai suddenly becomes like a disciple. He sits with a talit and listens to his student, teaching him about Maseh Merkava. He never learned these things from his rabbi. He doesn't quote anyone. He tells what he understands. And these words are so amazing. That Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai will say, lucky are Abraham, our ancestors, that got someone like you from their loins. It's that you are created. You are the sons of these people. Blessed be the fathers who created such an amazing person as you, Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach. Now, I'm sure that any one of you would want to study Torah from Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach. It sounds more like fun, for me at least, when we look about these two people. But unfortunately, his story ends not very well. Before I go to the last story, to the sad story, I want to add one more thing about him that also gives a direction of who he was and how he was. Do we have time for that? Yes, we can manage to do that too. So the story here tells about the Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai when he was had a terrible thing that happened to him. He lost his son, which is probably the most terrible thing anyone can experience. Losing your own son is the most extreme tragedy that is known to us as a prayer. This is what, whenever you want to talk about the greatest tragedy, is the tragedy of losing your own son. So when the son of Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai died, his disciples came to console him. And they become exactly the same, just in the Mishna, one after the other. Rabbi Eliezer comes first. And he sat down before him, and he asked his permission to say something. Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai says yes. And then Rabbi Eliezer says, Adam, right, the first person, and Adam, the first, accepted consolation when his son died. Right? We all remember the story of Cain and Hevel. When Cain kills his son Hevel, so we know that Adam lost his son, and then it says, and whence do we find it so? It is written, and Adam knew his wife again. Again means after this consolation. So thou also should accept consolation. So he comes to Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai and try to, Rabbi Yochanan is mourning, and he needs consultation is the right word. It's nechama, but he's not willing to accept it. He insists on staying in grief. And he said to, and Rabbi Eliezer said to him, listen, even Adam accepted he lost his son, and then he managed to continue with his life. So you're supposed to do the same. And Rabban Yochanan answers, is not my own grief sufficient that you must remind me of that of Adam the first, of Adam Arishon? I grieved on my son. Now I need to remember that also other people, that Adam lost his son. The grief is not less when other people also grieve. That doesn't make it better for me. The story continues with a long list. Rabbi Yoshua comes in and says the same thing, talk about Job, that also missed his not only one son, but many sons and daughters, all of whom died. And then Rabbi Yochanan answers the same thing. Is it enough that my grief is sufficient? That though reminds me of that of Job. So what is it with all you? Like, I don't need to remember that the world is filled of tragedies. It's enough with my own tragedy. And one after the other, all of them do that. Until Rabbi Elazer ben Arach comes. The second Rabbi Elazer ben Arach comes in, things are differently. You can see that he has a completely different approach. That Rabbi Yochanan, even the second he sees him, he says something here needs to change. So finally, Rabbi Elazer ben Arach entered. And when the master, Rabbi Yochanan, saw him, he said to his servant, take a vessel and follow me to the bathhouse. The man who's entering now is a great man, and I am sure that I could not withstand his arguments. So until now, Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai stands in mourning, which means he doesn't shave, he doesn't bathe, he sits in his torn garments. And now The second just sees Rabbi Elazer ben Arach. He said, okay, now I have to, there's no chance. I can't continue with what I did until now, only from seeing him. And then Rabbi Elazer ben Arach comes. He entered, sat down before him and said, he doesn't ask for permission to talk. The other asks for permission. He comes in and talk. I will entertain thee by telling a parable. A king had entrusted one of his subjects with a precious article. The man used to exclaim, weeping, "Who is me? When will I be relieved of this responsibility?" Yes, you understand? So if if the king comes to me and said, you have to take care of this vessel, it's a terrible task, because I'm very worried that something will happen. So I will walk around waiting on the second that the king will take off my burden of keeping this vessel. This, O Rabbi, is thy case. Thy son, who spent his time in sacred study, departed from the world sinless. What a comfort it ought to be to thee that thou hast returned the article entrusted to thy care intact. Can say you did your work. Your job wasn't to keep him safe. Like you couldn't take care of when he dies, but you were supposed to take care of how he lives, and you did your task. You had the sinful son who lived, who studied. He had a sacred life, and he left this world sinless. That's a comfort. Think of how he lived, and that you now are relieved of your duty. And hereupon, Rabbi Yochanan said, Elazer, my son, thou hast consoled me as people should console each other. This is a way you talk to. You don't need to do fancy studies. You don't need to argue. You just need to talk to me as a person, and not bring evidence from the Torah, from the Bible, from different stories of how you should talk to me as persons do. So we can see definitely an amazing person. Also, he doesn't use the Torah here as a source, right? He comes with a parable by himself, not something that he's learned from the rabbi. He did no quotation. He uses his understanding of people. He uses his own not own knowledge of the world, but own understanding of the world to his arguments, to his Torah, to his studies, and bring the world into the Torah to create something. Now, I'll go forward to the finish of the story. I think I have it here. One second, I need to find the. Where is the? So now I don't have the source from. I want to show you the last source of Rabbi Elazer ben Arach and how. Yeah. I think I have it here. So it takes me a second. Yeah, I found it. Good. So, when Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai dies, Rabbi Eliezer said, I should go to Diomset. It's the city of Emmaus. In Hebrew, the Diomset is probably a beautiful place with beautiful and delightful waters. You remember, he's the one of the Mayana Mitgaber, of the spring. So he goes to the place of the wonderful waters. But they said we should go to Yavne, where there are scholars in abundance who love the Torah. So they separate. The other disciples go to Yavne, and he goes to Emmaus, to Diomset. ליאור תעזור לי, אני לא יודע איך קוראים לאמאוס, זה נכון?
I don't know myself, אני גם מבולבל לגבי השם הזה.
Yeah. Because he went to Diomset, a beautiful place with beautiful and delightful waters, his name was made least in the Torah. Because they went to Yavne, where there are scholars in abundance who love the Torah, the name were magnified in the Torah. And the story goes on like this. Said Rabbi Chelbo. Maybe someone else can read again? Because my voice is starting to get tired.
Said Rabbi Helbo, the wine of the land of Hugaita and the waters of the lake Deumset robbed Israel of 10 tribes. Because of indulgence in these pleasures are detrimental to spiritual welfare. Rabbi Elazer ben Arach happened to be there and indulged in those luxuries to such an extent that he forgot his learning, and afterwards the sages had to pray for his return unto the law. This is as we have learned elsewhere. Rabbi Nehurai said, go into exile only in a place of learning, and think not that the law will follow thee, or that thy comrades will preserve it in thy hands, and do not depend upon thy acquired knowledge. This Rabbi Nehurai is, according to some, the same Eliezer ben Arach, and he was called Nehurai because this signifies in Hebrew light of the eyes, for he enlightened the eyes of many scholars with his interpretations.
Yes. So we see here the story that is, how does this story come? We see the story of him going to Emmaus, to this Diomset. And Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach, even though the Mishnah states that he could outweigh all of the rabbis of Israel, including Rabbi Eliezer ben Hokinus, even though in the Mishnah we find barely anything from Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach. He was the greatest disciple, but nothing has remained from him, only the stories. And we see probably his knowledge was amazing. We all wish to hear what he said to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai when Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai came down from the donkey. But we don't know anything from it because there's nothing left from him. And probably that is the discussion here in the story that Rabbi Norai comes with of what happened to Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach. He went to the place of comfort, and he thought because he was the main rabbi that the other will come to him. But they didn't. They went to Yavne to study. And he forgot everything. Because Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach is such a rabbi who is like a spring. He doesn't have something of its own. It's all the time water that comes in and go out. There's a movement. He's not a bor suda v'sheino me'ametim. He doesn't hold the water. He let the water come through. But if nothing comes in, then nothing can grow. So slowly, the spring gets dry. And Rabbi Elazer ben Arach, he forgets everything. The fact that he's an amazing disciple that is so interesting to hear, to learn from, to learn with, doesn't mean that he stays as part of the tradition. Because you need someone who's also stable. Someone that he studies also stays somewhere. And that's why when you go into exile in a place of Torah, in a place of learning, you can't assume that because you are clever enough, it will come with you. You have to choose a place, right? Not choose to, you can't move and learn and live in Aarhus and then hope that Torah will come to you. No, you have to go to a place where Torah exists. I don't know why I thought of that example. Yeah, well, if you want to, you need to come to a place where the Torah is studied. You have to move or to choose a place of living that will let these things live and stay alive and be connected to the source. Especially if you're such a person who not only remembers everything, but someone who can create yourself. So I would say that historically, the Mishna and probably Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai preferred Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach as a student. But the need of the generations is sometimes someone who understands that he needs to stay together in contact and in dialogue with his surroundings. Maybe today that we can study online from all over Scandinavia, it solves this problem that even though you go somewhere far, you can still remain in contact, remain in study, and not go to a mouse and get the water and the wealth of a mouse make you forget the Torah because you can stay online and in touch and study Torah from everywhere. Studying the geographical aspect is not there, but it is something that we should learn and study and see these types of students that the Mishnah brings to us, because these types of study, of a way to study, they're relevant to the way we study until today. In the rabbinical world, you talk about two types of students: Sinai v'oker harim. Sinai is someone who remembers everything. The one who is like Rabbi Eliezer, who will never forget anything his teachers taught him. Oker harim is someone who he can oker harim tochanan ze bazeh. He can move mountains, change every understanding of the geography of the way the world looks, with his power of the way he thinks and the way he argues and his understanding of things. These two types are the types of studies that exist, and I would say sometimes you need the one, and sometimes you need you need the other. So this is a bit about the students of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. You probably reflect on him and the way he thought, and in this sense, I would say that since Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, we start looking on the disciples to understand who the rabbi was, because a rabbi is not only how clever he is and how well he argues and how much he remembers, but most of all, a rabbi is what he creates among his disciples. And from there, that time and on, the disciples teach us about the rabbi just as much as the rabbi who is once rabbi explains about the student. Who the students are explains about who the rabbi was. So And in that sense, I would say that you are, as students of this Beit Midrash, you are the one to create what the Beit Midrash is. Not only the rabbis who teach, but the way that it's implemented, the way that you are studying, the way that it's being understood. This is the Mishnah here goes from the importance of the rabbis and their knowledge to the importance of the students and the way they implement, the way they study, the way they understand. So thank you for today, and it's a bit different than the usual. We make it more historical, and we continue next week with the Mishnah and the great understanding we have about these different people. Shavua Tov, Shabbat Shalom already. You can say from Wednesday you can start saying Shabbat Shalom. So all the best. And good preparation and cleaning for Pesach.
Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.